Today we're going to make the bracket that you see before you, and we're going to be using the sweep command, which is the objective of this particular lesson. So first thing I'm going to do is go to the application button, pick new, and I'm going to pick a part. Then I'm going to select the work plane that I wish to work in for my sketch. So create sketch. I'm going to click on the work plane, and then I'm going to use the rectangle tool, and I'm going to anchor it to the origin, which is typical good practice, and type in the first dimension of 0.25, hit tab, and type in 0.25. Then I press enter, and now I have that part. Now I need the other part of that bracket, so I'm going to go ahead and come over here and type 0.25, tab, and it already has 2.5 because it's aligned with the top of the other bracket. But I'm just out of good habit, I just always prefer for my students and for myself to go ahead and double check and make sure. Next thing I need to put a dimension to tell the inventor how far apart I want these two blocks. I can press dimension up here, I can press the shortcut key of D and click on the two edges, and on this particular example I want it to be 1 inch apart. So I'm going to type in 1. Now I'm going to use the pan. Some of you are familiar with how to use the mouse to go ahead and pan and orbit and so forth, but you can also use a navigation bar. You'll find some students will gravitate towards the navigation bar, and others will gravitate towards just using the mouse to do all these commands. So I have this done, so I'm going to right click OK, so I'm finished with my dimensioning, and I'm going to right click and finish sketch. Next thing I want to do is extrude, so I'm going to pick extrude, pick the profile, and I do want it to be 0.25, and I'm going to pick the other profile and make it 0.25, and I'm going to change the direction so that it goes the opposite direction. A lot of CNC mills prefer to go in this direction from the origin, so I find this a good practice and good habit to get into, so when the students are taking other classes or using CNC mills, that they can feel comfortable and get into that good practice. I'm going to click check, so that one's okay. So the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and create another sketch. I can hit S for shortcut for sketch, and I'm going to put a circle that is eventually going to be my handle, and I want to make sure that it is aligned so I can use some of my constraints. I can pick the horizontal constraint and make sure it aligns with the midpoint here, and I can pick the vertical constraint and make sure that aligns with the midpoint there. So I know that's in the middle, and I also want to dimension it. I can dimension as I start, I can go part way through, and my dimension needs to be 0.1, so I'm going to type in 0.1. Now the next thing I want to do is also I want to put a circle on the second part, so I'm going to go ahead and put a circle, and see it's going to line up, and I can go ahead and type 0.1 right here. But again, I want to go ahead and double check and make sure I have all the constraints. See, it moved it over, so that's a good sign that it looked like it was closely lined up, but you had no guarantee, so I used my constraints to verify that. So now I have these two sketches. Now whenever you're doing the particular sweep, you need a profile and you also need a path. And you need to make sure that that path falls right in the center of these two circles. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create a work plane. So I'm going to click on work plane. I click here, and I'm going to drag negative 0.125 is going to be the middle, because you remember the particular blocks were 0.25. I'm going to hit the check mark to accept that. And again, I can click sketch or press the letter S, and now I want to do my sketch on that work plane. Now one of the key things you're going to have to do is make sure that you have these particular circles such that you can use them to draw the arc. Now you can get close, but you notice if I pick arc right now and I go in there, I can guesstimate, but that's never a good idea. The way to solve this problem is to project geometry. So I'm going to project geometry, and all I need is the center of the circle, and I need both of them. So now when I go to arc, notice what happens. Green. In this case, that's a good green, that's constraining it so that I know I'm in the middle of that circle. And so I'm going to type in 0.75 for my dimension, and now I have this particular arc. So now I'm going to right click, finish sketch. Now I'm ready to use the sweep. So I pick sweep, and I'll leave this up for you to see. So you can see the first thing it wants to do is a profile. So I'm going to pick that profile, and it automatically jumps to path. So that's the path I want to go to. But note what happens over here. See, it's not exactly lining up there. Now there's two ways to correct that. I can go ahead with the sweep now, and I can do an extrude to next, and it becomes a little more problematic and more work than I want to do. So what I'm going to do is come back in here and pick that profile, and notice that it fills in the rest of that gap, which is what I want to do for this particular handle. So I'm going to click OK. And now you can see how I have everything set up, but there's a couple things I want to do. I can come to this work plane, right click, and turn its visibility off. Now it's grayed out over in the browser bar, and I can bring its visibility back if ever I need to use it. But in this case, I'm going to leave it off because I don't want to see it. Now, I could go around and do a lot of extra work here. I can go ahead and put fillets on this to round it out. I could have made this with a circle also, but this just makes life a little different, and a different way of approaching making those type of objects. It's not wrong if you had started off with a circle, but that gets you going. So now I have the basis, and kind of similar to what I had before, and I can go ahead and put a fillet on that if I want to make it look exactly like the other one. But that's not really important that we make it exactly like the other bracket. But it's important that we understand that my profile has to be perpendicular to where I want to take the path. That's the key thing to take away from whenever you're using the sweep. And the other thing you may have noticed is the object I had a kind of a wood look. So I want to go to Eye Properties, Physical, and I can come down through here and say, well, what would cherry looks nice. And I can see all of my mask properties showing up here and so forth, and you can change the level, whether you want it to be high, low. At this point I can click Apply, and now when I close this window, notice that now I have a nice cherry handle using the sweep command. I hope this helps out, and good luck using the sweep